sit among the flickering flames as shadows, memories dance upon a wall. Upon the air travels tales of heroes and villains, beauties and beasts, virtues and vileness. Let us tell stories of giants, enormous men who use their strength and stature to commit beastly acts of violence. Once upon a time, a sailor and his crew found themselves trapped in the cave of a one-eyed giant who decided to eat the little men before him. While the giant slept, the sailor fashioned a long spear and poked out the giant's eye. The blind giant, desperate and in anguish, rolled away the stone from the entrance of the cave, freeing Odysseus and his men from the Cyclops. A young king takes a magical sword to Rome and is set upon by not one, but two giants in single combat. His strength, his righteousness, and magical sword aid him to grapple the giants and kill them. His reputation set, King Arthur is crowned Holy Roman Emperor. An enormous giant holds an army at bay, taunting them from across a high valley. No seasoned warrior, no brave squire will step forward to challenge this man. Until one day, a boy, sent to check on his brothers in the king's service, volunteers to fight Goliath in the name of God. Why do we tell stories? Why are they so important? When God incarnate, that's Jesus, by the way, when he spoke to us, he used parables, stories, in order to teach us. Now, I'm not great with doctrinal verses from Paul or the laws of Leviticus, or the poetry of Job or Psalms or Isaiah. But the prodigal son, Moses and the burning bush, Luke and Vader, I'm great with all of these. Wait, that last one, maybe. So, does anyone turn on the lights? For those of you who don't know, my name is Josh. I am not Rob, obviously. I'm a member here at the church, and Rob, for those of you who don't know, is moving today. So I am preaching for you. And we are going to be talking about, in case you haven't guessed, David and Goliath. And it's interesting because, well, we're doing this series not just for kids, and it's all stories we've grown up with. And so, no matter what culture you're from, you almost automatically know these stories. Do you know that every single culture on earth has a flood story? Every single culture on earth has a story about Cinderella. Every single culture on earth has dragons, and every single culture on earth has giants. I find that fascinating. You know, we all saw Thor. There's frost giants. We get it. You know. So when it comes to like David and Goliath, I mean, what am I going to say, right? We've all kind of heard it. We've all, you know, for me, it was one of the first stories I ever heard. You know, as a kid, like I said, there was Luke and there was David. Those are my action heroes. Have faith in God. Go to bed. Get done. Whatever. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is on. Got the story. Okay. But we have to tell the story. We have to understand what's going on in this. And it's a really long tale, so I'm going to summarize it. Can you guys hear me okay, by the way? Yeah. Great. So I'm going to do a little summary of this story. But if you want to, it's found in 1 Samuel 17, and that's page 288 in these Bibles. But I'm not going to tell it from the Bible. I'm doing a little twist with it. So I'm making it kind of more dramatic, shockingly. If you don't know me. The Philistine forces had gathered on a hill to the west of the valley of Elah. As the descendants of Anak, whose ancestry goes to the Nephilim, the sons of God, who walked the earth in the time of Noah, they were prepared to roust the upstart Hebrews, their God and their king. And they looked across the valley and saw the Israelites, camped to defend their tribes. And that would not do. With the valley between them, neither Philistine or Israelite could risk an assault, and that would be madness. For you'd be climbing up out of the valley onto the high ground, and you would be easy pickings for the opposite army. It would be a massacre. So in the traditions of the Mycenaeans and Atlanteans of old, a single champion of the Philistines stepped forward into the valley. The sun glints off his bronze helmet. The links of his mail shirt rattled with death for any who approach. Greaves protect his legs, and he ignores thorn and thistle as he strides right through them. His spear stands as tall as the Israelite king, and his curved sword yearns to thrush the heads of men from their necks like wheat. Then his voice booms across the valley. You line up for battle, but cannot fight. You are servants of Saul, an ant before me, a Philistine, who took your precious ark and killed your priests. Send out a man to me. If he can kill me, we will be your subjects. If I kill him, you will be our slaves. This day, I defy the armies of Israel. Then the giant turns his back and returns to his army, leaving the Israelites, warriors all, quailing and quaking with fear. Even Saul, their king, who stands ahead above every man there, will not face this physical demon embodied in a man who taunts them. Meanwhile, a boy, 12, 13, the youngest son of old Jesse. Everybody knows old Jesse. David. He approaches the battle with bread and cheese for his brothers. A gift from an old man to his sons, who he knows might not come home. David is young, he's strong, he's handsome. And he arrives at the camp just as the giant's taunts echo from the valley for the 40th time. And he looks around and he sees the men around him, warriors of the living God, an occupation he probably played and pretended to do when he was small. And what are they doing? They're doing the worst thing a good man can do. Nothing. With the swagger of youth, David, boy who tends sheep all the time, all day long, he tells these men with swords that he'll fight the giant. Who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of Israel and the living God? See, to David, size does not matter. He's always been the smallest. He's had 8 older brothers that he's been fighting with his whole life. So the king hears of this boy, saying he'll fight in the name of God. So the boy is sent for to hear the king's wisdom as he sighs. You cannot go and fight this Philistine. You are only a young man, David. And he's been a warrior from youth. This boy, he looks up at the king. His eyes, they don't show surrender, but defiance. I tend sheep. And when a bear came to take one of my flock, I killed it. When a lion hunted my sheep, I hunted it, seized it by the hair, and killed it. God is alive, and he rescued me from those beasts' claws. And he'll rescue me from the hand of this Philistine. For he is a beast, just like they were. And I will make him like I made them, dead. All right then. There we go. You may need some armor, says the king. But the armor is too big, it's too grandiose. The shepherd boy can't move as he needs with the lithe quickness that he's so accustomed to. David rejects the armor. Instead goes to a stream bed, now dry, and finds 5 stones worn by water into smooth missiles. With a staff and sling in hand, he charges toward the giant. The man mountain sees this boy coming, and it's no man, son of warrior, coming to face him, and he's insulted. Am I a dog that you come at me with sticks? I'll feed your flesh to the birds, and animals will devour you. The boy is not afraid. His pace does not slow down. In fact, it quickens as he retorts. You are weak. You have sword, spear, javelin, but they're as nothing. I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, God of the armies of Israel, and you will not defy him. He will deliver you into my hands, and this very day I'll strike you down, cut off your head, and it is your carcass and those of all the Philistines that I will leave for the feast of ravens and the fatten the bellies of the animals. And the whole world will know there is a God in Israel, and that this is his battle. And the giant roars in rage and defiance. He barely takes a step. And when that dead stone flies out of David's sling, it sinks into Goliath's forehead, cracking his skull. The giant topples, and David is fast upon him. He pulls the sword from the giant's belt and brings its weight through sinew and blood and backbone, and the giant's head rolls across the valley. And panting, the huge sword in hand, spattered with the blood of his enemy, David looks at the Philistine army. They are slack-jawed at the death of their champion, and they see this kid, and they turn and they run for their very lives. And that's it. I love that story. But is that all there is? It's probably not. I mean, if the moral of the story was simply, when you face gigantic problems and overwhelming odds, have faith in God and it'll get you through. You know, that's a packed, simple answer that we put on plates and we hand to children. Because it's easy for us. You know? But if that's all there was, you know, I don't think this story would have been passed down. It's a good moral. It's a moral that we need to know. But like every story in the Bible, there's always more. Okay? So that's all there was. There wouldn't be children's books about it. There wouldn't be Disney films and the ultimate word of theology, VeggieTales, when I did that as a story. So, when we are unpacking stories from the Bible, I'm not talking about law, I'm not talking about poetry, but stories. There are three elements that I think through which God is speaking to us almost every time. I should say almost every time. He's always speaking to us in the physical, the societal, and the spiritual. Now, he's usually got way more to say than encompass those areas in every story, but those three I have found in every Bible story. Excuse me. Now, that the physical, societal, and spiritual is probably the smartest thing I'm going to say today, so write it down, remember that. Take nothing else away. Just remember that whenever you're reading a story. So let's talk a little bit about the physical, but I'm not going to be able to separate these out. I'm going to be talking about them intertwining a little bit. So let's start with the physical. This is a story about a gigantic warrior fighting a little boy. But beyond that, the physical description of what's going on in this story is massive. Okay? There's the physical description of Goliath. He's described in verse 4 as 6 cubits and a span, or the NIV puts it, he's 9 feet tall, about 9.5 feet tall. Now there's some older translations use Septuagint, and they say, well, he was only 6.5 feet tall, give or take, which would have made my size. But I don't think that's accurate. It makes way more sense to me that he's 9.5 feet tall, and here's why. Well, I'll get to it. But keep in mind, I'm 6'4", so that's 6.5 feet. And so a giant would have been, the ceiling, basically. So let's assume for now that Goliath is over 9 feet tall. And we also have it in verses 4 through 6. We get a very physical description of all his armor. So let's take it one by one. He had a bronze helmet. He had a coat of scale armor of bronze. Now that's interesting because we know from Egyptian descriptions of Philistinian headdresses that they weren't helmets. They were more like feathered headdresses and caps that they wore. Okay? So he has this bronze helmet, which is more in keeping with Assyrian armor. Okay? The bronze armor that he wore was about 150 pounds. So for it to weigh that much, for it to be linked the way it would be more in keeping with Egyptian style armor. Okay? He wore greaves, which is, a shin guard. Goliath is the only warrior in the Bible to ever be described as wearing greaves. Because if you were fighting in Mesopotamia, you didn't wear greaves. You didn't have these shin guards on. Those are from, we all saw 300, the Greeks are wearing them, right? That's a Greek, it's what the Aegean warriors wore. Those greaves would be passed down from the Greeks to the Romans, and so when you see like Roman, recreations of Roman battles, they're wearing greaves. But that would have been unknown in the battles that Israel fought against the Philistines. So he's got weird armor on here. He's got a weird chainmail. He's got a weird hat, not in keeping with being a Philistine at all. Okay, what else does he have? Well, he's got a huge javelin. We know that. He's got a spear. That, by the way, that spear is described as being like a weaver's rod. But basically, what that is that's the beam that you would put across a loom that holds everything in place. To stop Samson, he was chained to a weaver's rod, and he eventually broke it. But that is how heavy and big those things were. The spearhead that Goliath had was made of iron and it weighed about 15 pounds. So the javelin was for throwing. The spear was for that close combat, that thrusting. And if you got hit with that thing, you would have no more stomach. It was that big. So let's see, where was it? There we go. So he had a javelin, spear, and he had a sword. Now the sword is also very strange. See, the Hebrew word for this sword is hireh, which means a cutting instrument or a drought. It is indicative of something that would be used to cut crops, like a scythe. It would be curved, like a scimitar. The Philistines didn't use swords like that, but the Babylonians did. We have more description of Goliath's armor than we do for any other warrior in the Bible, and we only get more details about what the Levite priests wore in the Bible. That's weird. That's interesting. That's something we should probably be paying attention to then. And so, did you notice in that physical description? I'm sure you did, because basically that's all I was pointing out. We have a helmet from Assyria, armor from Egypt, greaves from Greek and the Roman Empire, and a sword from Babylon. This is a who's who of Israel's enemies. He is wearing the clothes that are all encompassing of Israel's enemies throughout the Bible. And every single one of those societies is mentioned in Daniel's dream and the book of Revelation as being persecutors of the church. Are we just telling a simple story about a boy and a giant? Or is there more here already in just the first 6 verses? I think God's telling us something. I think God's warning us. He's constantly bringing us back to these themes, these ideas. Sorry, my printer turned up blank pages. That's not helpful. So let's look at the other side of this battle. It's Saul. We have Saul. Saul is king. We have a physical description of Saul in 1 Samuel 9:2. Saul, an impressive young man without equal among the Israelites, a head taller than any of the others. So anthropologists at this time would say that the average Israelite warrior is about 5'6", which makes Saul my height. This is why I don't think Goliath was my height. If I'm Saul, and some guy walks out who's 2 inches taller than me, and I've killed thousands of Philistines already, I'm like, I got this. No problem. But a guy walks out who's bigger than Andre the Giant. He was a wrestler, for all you know. Shaquille O'Neal? No? Big shot? Who were, by the way, 2 feet shorter than what Goliath would have been. Yeah, Goliath had like 1.5 feet chamber. To put that in perspective. Some of you know who Will Chamberlain is. So he comes out, the Goliath taunts them. There's another physical thing that we get. On hearing the Philistines' words, this is in verse 11, Saul and all the Israelites were dismayed and terrified. And a better interpretation of that word is that they quailed with fear. They were physically shaking. We have this physical tank in front of us. We have this tall guy, and this tall guy who is the king is afraid, so afraid, like, you're rallying around, you know. Saul was physically strong. He was physically tall. He was handsome. And what good did it do him? It didn't matter. Okay? Strength in and of itself is not a net good. Right? It's nice, but it's not the important thing. Physical strength is not a net good. It is simply a tool. It must be coupled with courage. Rocky and Khal Drogo from Rocky IV are both very physically strong, but we root for Rocky because he had the courage to get in the ring against an enemy. That and, America. So then there's David. David is the youngest of his brothers, so he got scraps. We already kind of talked about the fact that he was always the smallest guy. So, verse 42 says that he was only a youth, ruddy and handsome. And I think that's also really interesting because when Goliath sees that David is a young guy, that he's ruddy and that he's handsome, ruddy like he's red from being out in the field. He's got a young complexion. It causes Goliath to have disdain. Goliath disdains this beautiful young man running toward him. I think about Goliath, I think that he had some jealousy. He's 9 feet tall. He's a great warrior of the Philistines, but I don't think he was probably not a hit with the ladies. You know? It wasn't like he was a big guy. There's a physical grotesqueness to him that he's a tool for their army, but it kind of sets him outside of human relationships. And here's this kid, not a warrior, not someone like him who's leather-faced, who's coming at him. And he's feeling like, you guys have contempt for me. This is the only thing I've got, is being this warrior. And you're sending out someone to me who's not even that. And he hates David in that moment. When I think of grotesque things, I also think of the devil, of Satan. Satan was a beautiful angel who defied God, is warped, and everything he does is twisted. And he looks upon the beauty of God and the beauty of God's relationship with us, and he disdains it, and he hates it. I think there's an allegory there. Maybe. But something to consider. So he sees David coming, and it's a kid without armor. Okay? And that's interesting because we also get a physical description of Saul's armor in verse 38. Saul also, bronze helmet, coat of mail, with a sword strapped over it. Now the New Revised Standard Edition says that when that was all put on to David, he tried to walk in vain. It was useless to him. And I think, how often do we do that? How often do we try to be someone else in vain? To kind of mimic their actions, to put them on us in vain? How many sons cracked under the pressure of trying to be like dad because society expected it of them? How many girls have emulated pop stars to find fame and ended up making themselves miserable? Modern Christianity, self-help book sells. We're always kind of touting a formula. If you do A, B, and C like I did, you'll be great. You'll find relief. If you want God in your life, set your alarm clock for 3:47 a.m., say the sinner's prayer every day, carry Psalm 23 in your pocket, and give food to the homeless once a month while standing on your head. Boom, that's the formula. You got it. That's what I did. But when I read the Bible, there are 66 books. And there are stories, and there's law, and there's prophecy, and love poems. There's doctrinal observations. observations, there's wisdom, there is something for everyone, because we are all different. And God does not want us trying to be someone else. He wants us to be the fullest person that He made us to be as individuals. You know? What speaks to me at one point in my life might not be what speaks to you. And flash forward 5 years, you could be showing me something from Habakkuk that I read a million times and never really got a lot out of, and it's totally changed your life. And now, because you shared it with me, and I'm at a point where it's like, oh, that changed my life too. We're all fighting battles, and they're not always the same battles. We should encourage each other. We should come alongside each other. But we should not try to force fit someone else into what we think is the formula for them winning their battle.
Yep.
They are a unique child of God, just as you are. Just as David was not Saul. Let's see here. Let's talk about some of the spiritual and societal elements in the story. And we'll get back to some of the physical elements in a minute. But this is a horizontal conflict between two nations, right? So you have the Philistines and you have the Israelites. And they are literally on a horizon looking out across each other. Okay? Verse 3 says the Philistines camped on the mountain on one side, the Israelites camped on the mountain on one side, and the Philistines camped on the other, and the valley was in between them. And so if they wanted to charge, they could go down the valley and up the hill, where if I'm the Israelites, I just go, thunk! That's how it will end. So they can't do that. So they're just looking at each other for days. The Israelites leave, the Philistines are going to go across that valley, and they're going to split Israel into and basically destroy it. If the Philistines leave, they have to go back to their home, and they're stuck. They don't have cities, they don't have some of the fertile land that they need. And they're at the mercy of traders on the sea, and that's it. Which means that in winter, they had no food, by the way. The Mediterranean was not crossed often in winter, which means that these coastal Philistine cities over here, by the way, where they are located nowadays, we have the Gaza Strip area. So we're talking about an area of Israel that's always been an area of conflict, a societal conflict. So let's talk about the Israelites. Who were they as a society? They are, and I'm going to wrap up soon, I promise. They are God's chosen people, right? Now, this time, they're coming out of the book of Judges, and it's been 300 years of them repeating this cycle of sin. You know, we don't need God, let's sin! Oh no, we're taken as slaves, and we're oppressed, we need God! God, here's a judge, you're saved. We love God! Do we need God? Let's sin! Sin and God. Right? But they are a society defined by their relationship with God. That is the key trait of the Jewish people. They are the chosen people of God. And when you read 1 Samuel 17, isn't it interesting that there's this entire army that doesn't mention God once? Not a single person, not Saul, not anyone who's there, has one whit to say about God in that whole narrative until the shepherd kid shows up. He's the only one who brings up God. Why do you think they were afraid? As an army and a society, they had forgotten who they were. So in verses like 25 and 26, when they're describing what happens for the man who kills Goliath, they talk about the riches from the king, that the guy who kills Goliath, his family won't have to pay taxes anymore, he'll get to marry the princess. But they don't talk about the blessings that God would give. See, I bet you most of you don't remember that many of things that they could have gotten, but we all remember that David beat Goliath because God was with him. Because the real blessing in the story is that God was with David. Right? The Israelites had substituted their relationship with the living God, the living heavenly God, for a relationship with an earthly government. Everything was from the king. That never happens today. So what about the other side? Who are the Philistines? Well, they come from the area of Canaan known as Hebron. Okay, which is kind of like, here's Jerusalem, go south, it's right in that area. That was the area that Caleb was told, go drive out these three sons of Anak, the Anakim. right? By the way, in the opening book of Judges, book 1, you read, so-and-so were told to drive out this tribe. They didn't. So-and-so was told to drive out this tribe. They didn't. So-and-so was told to drive out this tribe. They didn't. Caleb was told to drive out the Anakites. He did. He's the only one that actually is like, okay, God, I'll do it. And that's interesting because the Anakim are one of 4 clans mentioned in the Bible that were giant clans. So you're going, wait, giant clans? What do you mean giant clans? They were clans of people made up of giants, where Goliath was like normal. When I lived in California and LA for like 13 years, and everywhere I went, people thought I was really, really tall. Moved up here where there's these Swedes and Germans, everyone's like, oh, this is a normal sized guy. It's like that. So let's see. So the Anakim, one of 4 giant clans the Bible talks about, and they all seem to be, they have the strain of the Nephilim. Now this is a weird thing, and we're going to get into some weirdness here. But who the heck is these Nephilim? So they are mentioned in Genesis 6:4, where they are called the sons of God. And they went to human daughters, and the women bore them children, and those offspring were the heroes of old, warriors of renown. What? What? Basically, what it sounds like, and we don't know a whole lot, is that the Nephilim are these kind of fallen angels, procreate with women, and they have these warriors. Alright? That sounds a little crazy, but I've watched the History Channel. I've been to Egypt. I've looked at hieroglyphics. Every hieroglyphic has these giants and normal-sized people. Where did they get that idea? You know? I don't think Achilles and Hercules sprang up out of nothing. Every hero in Greek mythology is always somehow related to a god of some kind. That's an interesting idea. That's an interesting story that seems to be passed on into our DNA. Every culture has it. So, it's not a far-off idea that there would be these remnants at this time of gigantic men and women who had great strength. That's why I'm not a subscriber to Malcolm Gladwell's theory about Goliath, that he was this weak guy who had suffered from gigantism and all this stuff. So, I don't know if Michael Gladwell is. He wrote a book called David Goliath. He also wrote Outliers, where he did this theory like 10,000 hours of the next. It's a thing. So, okay. So, but what's it? So the Philistines, they were in Hebron. They kind of just show up anthropologically around 13 to 1500 BC. And based upon the fact that like Goliath has his bronze cleaves, it's a jean kind of armor, and he's challenging Israel to one-on-one combat. That was a thing that you did, like in Greece, the Mediterranean, and Crete. That tradition kind of was born out of that. All right. Now, interestingly enough, around 1500 BC, there was a giant explosion, a volcanic eruption. It's called the Thera eruption. And so it looks like what happened, and most scholars agree, that the Philistines came probably from the Isle of Crete and escaped this explosion and like settled on the western bank of Israel right there. So they're kind of this mishmash of pagan societies, right? Now, going back to story, I love the fact that they're from Crete. Crete is kind of the birthplace of the Minoan civilization, right? And there's a big story that comes out of Crete, and that's the story of the labyrinth. Not the David Bowie labyrinth. So, which I did watch last night. But no, this is the labyrinth that Daedalus built, Daedalus Icarus, and he built this for King Midas to imprison a minotaur. The minotaur was a half man, half ox, right? And this is the part where you all are going, why are you bringing up this like minotaur and this myth and this Greek thing? What's going on? Why are we doing this? And I go, because the minotaur was a cannibal. You sacrificed, you took people, you took children, you threw them to the minotaur and you ate them. That's what he was. From Crete, we get the word Cretan. And the Greeks talk about their fear of the Cretans because the Cretans were cannibals, and we actually have evidence of them being cannibalistic from the Isle of Crete. And that's a very physical thing. Right? It's a horrible, horrible idea. So we have in the Philistines a society that has these spiritual origins, right? These spiritual origins of the Nephilim and a kind of twisted and corrupted and into abominable, horrific cannibalism. And there's hints of this in the David and Goliath story. Look at verse 44 if you want to. Come to me, and I will give your flesh to the birds of the air and the wild animals of the field. This is common language. We all understand that you decay, things eat you. But it's a taunt. You will be devoured. And I think there's a spiritual connotation. If you talk to me long enough, I will bring up C.S. Lewis. So I'm going to do it now. In the Screwtape Letters, a letter to the demon Wormwood from the demon Screwtape, it describes the nature of demons who are corrupted angels, and it has a better description of hell than anything that I can think of. So this is from the Screwtape Letters. This is kind of the spiritual component of the physical act of cannibalism and why it's all connected. So, to us, a human is primarily food. Our aim is the absorption of its will into ours, the increase of our own area of selfhood at its expense. But the obedience which the enemy demands of men is quite a different thing. One must face the fact that all the talk about his love for men and his service being perfect freedom is not, as one would gladly believe, mere propaganda, but an appalling truth. He really does want to fill the universe with a lot of loathsome little replicas of himself, creatures whose life on its miniature scale will be qualitatively like his own, not because he's absorbed them, but because their wills freely conform to his. We want cattle who can finally become food. He wants servants who can finally become sons. We want to suck in, he wants to give out. We are empty and will be filled. He is full and flows over. A society without God is ultimately a society that will eat others and itself. We've seen this from the Aztecs to the Huns, the Vikings, the Nazis, the Soviets, the Cambodia, Cuba, Rwanda, and China. Now all the battles, ultimately all are spiritual ones. As Ephesians 6:12 says, for our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of the dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. So, obviously after all of this, I can't separate physical, societal, and spiritual elements from the story. You have to talk about all of them at the same time. And it's almost as if God created the physical, is the spiritual, and desires us to have society with him and each other. And to try to separate them out is to try to force God into armor that he refuses to fit. So let's look at the end of the story, because it combines all the elements. David shows up in the camp and says in verse 26, what shall be done for the man who kills the Philistine and takes away the reproach of Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God? So this punk kid shows up and immediately does what all punk kids do. He makes a penis joke. What he does. And that's where I said penis in church, and you can laugh, and it's hilarious, and I'm sure my mom is mortified. Hi, Mom. Hi, Grandma. But he's also doing what no one has done yet. He remembers Israel's relationship with God. He's calling out that this army is the army of the living God. This is army in covenant with God. That was what circumcision was. It was the symbol of a covenant, of a relationship with God. And David wants to know how someone can rise up in the society of Israel by killing a blasphemer who is not in covenant with God. So in any battle, this is what's important to remember, that God is our Father, and he has a relationship with us. In all our spiritual battles, and our addiction battles, that's what we need to remember. That God is our Father, and he's in a relationship with us. He's on our side. So David, shepherd, he gathers 5 smooth stones for his sling. Now physically, Goliath is a tank, right? We're all seeing his armor. But David, as a shepherd, is the perfect person for this battle. He doesn't wear armor. He's not going to fight this battle the way Goliath wants him to fight it. Right? He's used to using slings to fight animals. Using slings to hunt for his own food. This is a time when his dad would say, okay, David, you're 12 years old now. Go into the woods for a week. Take care of the sheep. I don't have any food for you. You better find it. I might not see you for a while. That was it? Can you imagine doing that to your 12-year-old today? Guy's like, no. Mom would never let me go. So with that sling, he would have had to have been a crack shot. Because if he wasn't, he didn't eat. Right? Now, with a sling, you're whirring around your head about 6 to 7 rotations per second. The stones in the wadi, which is the dry riverbed in the valley of Elah, are actually denser than your average stone by about twice. Ballistics tests say that that stone would have flown, it would have been smooth because it was in a riverbed, would have been flown out with the power of a 45 caliber handgun. That's the stopping power of that stone. Okay? So what does that mean? All that armor, useless against this kid with a sling. Right? David, his whole life, God had been preparing him for this battle. Even if he didn't know it. Older brothers tormented him, he killed a bear, he killed a lion, and his life as a shepherd had made him the perfect warrior to take down Goliath. Because he didn't fight Goliath on Goliath's terms. Goliath was expecting someone to come forward with a sword and spear and to be heavy and march and move slow. And David's like, right? What's faster than I? Right? David knew his talents. He knew what he was good at. He knew his limitations and he knew his capabilities. He didn't fight on the world's terms, he fought on God's terms. And as the future king of the Israelites ran toward the Philistines, he reminded all that, as he ran toward the Philistines, he reminded everyone there that this wasn't his battle, it was God's battle. David does everything in the name of God, with the talents that God gave him. Now you might not have talents or gifts the world says you have to overcome these trials. You have to do this, you have to look this way to be famous, you have to do this thing if you want to be successful, blah, 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 blah. What you have is who God made you to be. God prepared a shepherd boy to be the perfect warrior to save his kingdom. Don't you think that he's prepared you for the battles that you need to fight? Don't you think he's been raising you up all this way in ways you don't even know for the battles that you're fighting now, for the ones you're going to fight in the future? And if you're not sure you're prepared, then remember what we all learned when we were 7 years old when we first heard this story. Have faith in God when you're facing that giant, and he will help you conquer. That's it. That's the story. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for coming alongside of us. Thank you for being in our corner for all the battles that we fight. Thank you for preparing us as we are members of this church, which we look around and it looks like it's in collapse, but we know that this is part of your plan for our lives. We ask that you would give us the ability to use the talents that you've already given us so that we might further your kingdom. We thank you, Father, for this intimate time together, and we praise your holy name. We thank you for the gift of your Son, Jesus Christ. We ask that you would send him back soon so that we might see his face. In your name, amen. Amen.